Good morning, friends, or good afternoon, I should say. This is Joseph Romeo at Remax Executive Realty and Romeo Real Estate.live, where we review all of the new listings every single day in my marketplace. Except today, there's no new listings for us to review. So that's actually kind of surprising. I expect maybe on a Sunday we might run into days where there's no listings, but on a day like today, I expect to see a nice healthy batch. So that's a little out of the ordinary, but that's fine because I do have a special topic prepared for you. And it does happen to be November is Lung Cancer Awareness Month. And I figured for this month, we'll do the special topic of why should you fix your radon in your house, or why should you get your house tested now instead of when you sell. So this is going to be a very quick special topic. I actually don't have a formal outline of this prepared. There's just a few things that I wanted to go over because I do think it's important, and maybe a couple stories as well. So let's get into it. I do want to describe what radon is. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas. It forms underground and it can get trapped into basements, into houses. The radioactive part is the part that is harmful. Now, your house most likely has some amount of radon in it. This is not something that is meant to scare anybody. I mean, it's very common, and there's different levels, different ranges of radon. Also, if you even have a high level of radon in your house, keep in mind it's a lifetime of exposure thing. So I don't want to be too alarmist on you here. Now, you could have been living in your house for 5 years and still it's a lifetime of exposure. So your over the course of your life, when you live in your home, if you have high levels of radon over time, these gases can accumulate in your lungs and potentially cause issues. I would say you would marginally increase your chance of getting lung cancer. How does this apply to real estate? So in real estate, there's a home inspection process. Usually, I mean, in the past couple of years, we haven't had quite as many home inspections, but thankfully those are coming back. But during the home inspection process, I would say a good 90% of buyers test for radon. I always insist that my buyers test for radon, and most of the time they do. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the way that the deal was negotiated, they rather just take care of that after the sale. Regardless, it is a home inspection thing that is frequently done. And once the levels test high, I would say probably in the range of 30 to 50% of the time, it tests above the EPA recommended limits to have it fixed. And the cost to have it fixed can vary. It costs about, maybe I'd say on the low end, about $1,000. Sometimes if you have a dirt basement or crawl space and other things, it can get more expensive. I've had the repairs be a couple grand or more, and those are in the unique cases. Most of the time, it's just about $1,000. Radon can also be present in the water, and that's a whole different thing. I'm not going to talk about that too much, but that is an actually more expensive repair. So when you test for your water quality, you will most likely be testing for radon as well, and that's something to be mindful of. Let's get back to why you should be testing for this now instead of when you put your house on the market and letting the buyer do it. So you live in your house now. I don't know how many years, could be 2 years, could be 10 years, could be 30 years, but towards the end of your home ownership, once you do decide to sell, most likely you're going to be putting it on the market. Most likely you're going to have a buyer who's going to want to do a home inspection, and that will indicate potentially that there could be a high level of radon. So if there's a high level of radon that is present, I would say easily 9 to 9.5 times out of 10, the sellers are responsible for putting that system in. It's not a legal requirement. It's not something that is mandatory, but most of the time it's, I'd say, pretty customary that sellers end up paying for systems to be installed. So why does that matter? Well, I think first of all, imagine living in your house for 20, 30 years and then finding out you had really crazy, extremely high levels of radon in your house. It's probably not going to sit too well. And then on top of that, having to pay for it anyway because you're the seller and you're trying to sell your home. And if this buyer walks away, you'd have to market the house with radon, and it's just much easier to fix it. So I would rather have you all get on top of that up front than having that surprise towards the end. I mean, we did it when we tested our house. It came in kind of close to the recommended limits. A few years later, it actually came up higher. So when the reading came up higher and it was more above the recommended limit, that's when we decided, okay, we're going to be installing the system. It needs to be done. And I'm glad that we did because it gave me good peace of mind over the past, I'd say, about 4 or 5 years that we've had one installed in our house. And that's the kind of peace of mind I'd like you to have too. Don't want you to have to sell your house someday and then just have that surprise and then the regret that you didn't take care of it earlier. And that's another thing that I wanted to point out. Just because it tested low when you bought the house and you didn't have to have a system put in, that doesn't mean that maybe years down the road it couldn't double or triple. I mean, the readings really do vary. Uh, there's two ways that you can do probably more than two ways, but there's two typical ways that we test. There's little canisters that you just plop down and mail out, and the lab sends you a single reading. Or the home inspectors sometimes have this fancy machine where they'll put it down there for 2 days, and then they'll give you a report. And those reports are more specific, and they go hour by hour. I wish I had prepared that for this, but like I said, I'm kind of going off the cuff here. But if you looked at it, it would show you a graph, and hour by hour, you can see the radon readings going up and down. So it's not a constant thing, it's an average. So even if you've had your home tested before and it was like relatively low, I would think it's a good idea to get it tested again just in case. So I want to show you one item we have. This is the Home Buyers and Sellers Guide to Radon. I've attached a link in the description of this video if you wanted to review it. It's about 30 or so pages long. I actually don't know exactly how long it is. But I want to turn our attention to page 22 to give you the ideas of what the risk is. So keep in mind, this is a lifetime of exposure. And sometimes the way that I look at it is, well, you know what? After a lifetime of anything, I've lived my life. There isn't that much time left, so something's going to get me. You can have that attitude, but you get to your life, through your life, you get to your golden years. Don't you want to not have to worry about the 60 years of radon exposure that you've put yourself through? So if you don't smoke, if you've never smoked, if you've never been kind of say like identified as a smoker per se, these are your chances of getting lung cancer depending on the radon level. Like I said, radon levels, they are more of a spectrum. So I'd say if the ideal range you want to be is below 4 picocuries per liter. So that's the recommended fixing level between 2 and 4. Anything 4 and above, the EPA does recommend that you fix your house. And like I said, in most cases, we're talking about $1,000 more or less. It can definitely be more. Outside the average radon level is 0.4 picocuries per liter. And I'd say most of the time when we have homes tested, and this is for a home sale, they end up somewhere between I'd say usually between 3 and 8 or so, but I've seen them up as high as 30, I think, at least on the homes that I've sold. And I've heard home inspectors see them in the hundreds. So there isn't really much of a top limit as to what the radon levels can be. It's more of a statistical thing. So if you are at the recommended remediation limit, if you're a non-smoker, that's out of 1,000 people, you have about 7 people could get lung cancer. I mean, that's not even that scary, to be honest, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't take care of it. And that is equal to the risk of dying in a car crash. And the EPA recommends that you fix your home. At 20 picocuries per liter, it's about 36 people in 1,000. And that's 35 times the risk of drowning. They recommend that you fix your home. Now, if you are a smoker, the numbers, I think these numbers are more scary. So if you're a smoker, if the, let's say if you have 1.3 picocuries per liter, about 20 people in this group of 1,000 could get lung cancer. So that would be compared to 4, smoker versus non-smoker. At the recommended remediation limit, we're talking about 62 people in 1,000. And the scary one, if you're testing at 20, we're looking at 260 out of 1,000. So I didn't run the numbers, but oops. Didn't mean to pull that one up. I meant to pull up something else, but I would say about 2. Yeah, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to pull up the percentages, but that is very significant. 260 out of 1,000 compared to 36 out of 1,000. So what's the lesson here? Our lesson here is if you are a smoker, quit, because I mean that itself is a leading cause of lung cancer. Easier said than done, certainly. But I do have people who are smokers who really want to test for radon, and as you can see, it's understandable as to why they would want to test for radon. Yeah, however, I mean, there's something more important that can be addressed if they have it in them to quit. That being said, number 2, test your house, get it fixed if you can. I highly recommend it. And if you don't do it now, you might end up doing it in the future. So that's all that I have for you for today. We don't have, like I said, we don't have any new listings to review, but hopefully we'll be back tomorrow and we'll have something to take a look at for you. This is Joseph Romeo at Remax Executive Realty, Romeo's Real Estate Live. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye.